We continue our story with the Decepticons looking awe and in horror as Abominus pretty much descends upon them. And Megatron simply states, "What are you fools waiting for? Open fire." To which this is where Optimus himself, and even Megatron to a certain degree, actually does begin to get some flashbacks to the time Megatron foolishly, and I mean foolishly, allowed himself to be killed by Metroplex. And Optimus even states, "Are you going to make the same mistake you did with the Titan, Megatron?" To which this is where we actually see the Predacons simply state, "No worries, Lord Megatron, we'll take him down. Skylinks, Darksteel, with me." And they all transform into their beast forms and actually charge at Abominus. However, he grabs Skylinks and Darksteel and sandwiches them right onto Predaking, causing all of them to pretty much fall out the sky. And then, just like a simple baseball, kicks them like they're nothing. And this is where Megatron hears something on his transmission. Knockout. He's actually made his way to the warship and has simply told Lord Megatron they need to retreat now for their own benefit. And this is where the Decepticons reluctantly do retreat. They have no way of beating that combiner. And keep in mind, when the warship blasts off, it's blasting off at emergency levels of speed. And this is where Megatron looks around. Dead Insecticons, dead Viacons, little half of his army left, and a dead Shockwave. And he simply thinks to himself, how could I have fallen so great? Because keep in mind, while I never really talked about it as much, the Autobots have actually been ahead in the Relic Hunt. Megatron may have been ahead by his soldiers, by getting the Insecticon army, getting Six Shot and Dreadwing at the same time, getting Toxitron and Sound Blaster from leftover protoforms. But here he is, with nothing. The death of Hardshell, the death of Sound Blaster, Soundwave, and Shockwave. And now he simply wonders, what is the Decepticon cause supposed to do against something of that magnitude? Against something that can honestly level any of them in combat. Even his fiercest warriors, the Predacons, couldn't do a single thing to it. To which this is where they all begin kind of looking around. And this is where Megatron simply states, exactly. No one knows. Not a single person. Not any of you could have gotten a weapons cache while we were fighting out there. This is indeed even more of our darkest hour. I thought I counted my victories properly, but it seems I've counted them too early. However, Knockout simply states, well, Lord Megatron, not that they were away, I actually do have some things for you. To which Knockout actually looks at Breakdown, and Breakdown brings out a weapons cache. To which he's like, what? Huh? How? How did you? To which Knockout simply states, well, Lord Megatron, while the Autobots were busy, gawking over their new combiner, as you call it, or Predacon, if you will, I actually managed to take one. To which Megatron simply states, only two. These'll do. Dreadwing, you have served me faithfully. You may claim your first weapon. To which, this is where Dreadwing claims the Dread Cannon, and automatically it converges him into his Beast Hunter's incarnation. Powerful, stronger, faster, and more lethal. Megatron takes the Terratex Warp Sword and becomes his Sharkticon form, and they both feel the power radiating through them, enough to beat a Predacon. How quaint, Megatron thinks. And this is where Megatron simply looks at Knockout. Very good, Knockout. If you continue this lucky streak, perhaps there will be a commander post in your future. In my future? Lord Megatron, you flatter me. And so the Decepticons begin to set a course back to Earth, where they actually will begin their hunt for the Omega Keys. But this is where we actually do have to pan over to somewhere else. Somewhere that's just as important as the Decepticons. and that being Autobot Outpost Omega. The Autobots are feeling more triumphant than they before. They've got just about all the relics, minus the Toxin, but again, they were going to dispose of it anyway. But with it in the Decepticon hands, they are kind of on their toes. And then there's the fact that they have the weapons cache, and they have 3 of them, with Ratchet even stating that these weapons automatically will be able to help Wheeljack and Bulkhead get upright. And with the combination of Forge of Solus Prime, the weapons would augment them and fix them up a lot quicker. This is basically great news to all the Autobots. However, the Predacons feel more, and I mean more adjusted than before. They feel more closer to each other than before because of the combiner, with even Blot saying he wants to do that again. However, Twin Strike simply states, nah, I kind of do like it fighting on my own, or at least fighting as individuals, not combining on a regular basis. To which Hunger calms them both down and simply states they will only combine in emergencies. Does that fit both of your, ideals? To which they both simply nod. And this is also where we see Hotshot actually congratulating Bumblebee on successfully killing Sound Blaster. And keep in mind, he has been guarding Lugnut, kind of rubbing it in his face that the Decepticons are likely going to be dead. To which Lugnut's just kind of like, it's kind of glazing with his mouth simply strapped shut, but hey, it is what it is. But this is where Optimus simply asks Bulkhead and Wheeljack to come forward, or he simply comes to them, and not only do they grab their respective weapons, but they grab the Forge of Solus Prime. So Optimus grabs the Dragon weaponry and the Cyclo cannons and looks like his Beast Hunter look. Bulkhead actually grabs the, let's see, what did I want to call it? The Behemoth Axe. And he becomes like his secondary Beast Hunter's figure. And I feel like it would definitely just overall fit him. And this is also where Wheeljack grabs the Falconer Spear and, well, becomes his Beast Hunter's look as well. Every Autobot is more powerful than before. However, this is where Ratchet also notes that right now, they have to go after the Omega Keys. Otherwise, the Decepticons will get a upper hand on them. And this is where Cosmos is ready and itching to go. However, Override simply states she needs him here with Ratchet to decode any more coordinates that they would have. Matter of fact, she's got a better mission for him. She wants him to go ahead and find the Omega Lock. To which, this is where Cosmos is like, really? And Ratchet's like, actually, yeah, that would be a better idea. Imagine us being prepared beforehand and getting something available. And this is where the first Omega Key is located, and Hunger actually volunteers to go ahead with his own team and go out and get the first key, with Ripper Snapper being all for it. And this is where the Predacons actually do make their way to the first key. Let's say it's in the same area as when Knockout fought RC and Bumblebee. And this is where they actually do locate the Omega Key. And this is where he actually begins commanding his team to kind of scout out for a bit while he goes for the key. But this is where someone says, just the group I was looking for. And out walks Sharkticon and Megatron, with the Predacons easily on edge because they never seen Megatron in this kind of light. But Twin Strike doesn't care. He simply states, coming by yourself, huh? A good chance to rip apart the Decepticon leader once and for all. To which Megatron simply laughs and states, I used to be a champion in the pits of Kaon, and I used to fight beasts like you on a regular basis. Come, let us see who is superior. To which all the Predacons transform into their beast forms, and Twin Strike is quite obviously the first to rush, but also the first to get put down with ease. Megatron sidesteps and drops him with a single punch, shocking the others, but this is where they all begin to rush in at this point, allowing Twin Strike to get some time to get up. Megatron is utilizing his gladiatorial skills in combination with the new weaponry to actually be able to put the Predacons on the back foot. Even their fire blasts are easily deflected by the antimatter that actually swirls within the Terratech's warp sword and the Shark Tooth cannon, which actually launches these blue heat-seeking energon beams, which actually does a large amount of damage to the Predacons. And this is where they actually see that they got no choice. And this is where Hunger simply states, Predacons combine into Abominus. And well, they do so. But as the fight continues, Knockout actually takes this opportunity to snag the Omega Key and rush back through the space bridge, telling Megatron that they have the first key secure. And this is where Megatron, who actually was able to blast Abominus back, simply states, "You wouldn't be the first combiner I killed, and you certainly won't be the last." To which he tries to fire, but this is where Abominus actually shows he's quite adaptable, actually dodging out of the way, punching Megatron in the air, and this is where Megatron sees him heat up his dorsal spines, and kind of just like Godzilla in a way, he actually launches his fire breath in more of a molten heated beam. And Megatron narrowly dodges this. It actually does clip his chest, and he sees that it could have definitely been fatal had it been able to tear through him. But this is where Megatron simply states, next time then, and transforms and flies off, with the Decepticons getting the first Omega Key. However, as Abominus disassembles, Hunger simply states they need to get back to base and get repaired. I never thought he would say that in a million years, but seems like he barely has a choice now, right? But this is where we pan over to the next battle. One that is actually going a lot more evenly than, I'll probably say a lot of things at the moment, right? And this is the battle between Bumblebee, Hotshot versus Toxitron and Mindwipe. The battle itself is getting way too intense here. Slash marks, gutting, hurting, and Toxitron is actually going to be able to get the upper hand here because he is able to utilize the properties of Toxin. Bumblebee, seeing this, decides to make a tough call and actually hands the phase shifter to Hotshot, who is actually looking in shock here, but utilizes it in time to, not get stabbed by a blow from Mindwipe. However, this doesn't mean Bumblebee is out the way. He rushes at Toxitron and buries his fist right into his body. And Toxitron is like, What are you doing? You'll kill us both." To which Bumblebee simply bleeps and states, "That's the plan," and actually transforms with his blaster out. And knowing good and well how destructive this property is, he blows himself up, shocking both Hotshot and Mindwipe. But with Hotshot at a different distance than the Omega Key, Mindwipe decides to simply just take it and run off. But Hotshot actually counters it by utilizing the phase shifter and snagging the key for himself and actually turning his hand into a blaster and shooting Mindwipe back, causing him to transform and flee. The Autobots have a key and the Decepticons have a key. However, unfortunately right now, it came at the cost of Bumblebee. But that's where we're going to leave off here today, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I'll see you guys for the next part. Peace.